Greetings, loved ones. Let's take a journey. Yes, I just quoted a Katy Perry song. You're welcome for reminding you of that era. Today on Killer Bites, I'm going to tell you about the case of Blair Adams while I make an apple cider cake. If you'd like to bake with me, you can find the recipe in the description below. There are a lot of confusing true crime cases out there, but this one might be the most confusing one I've ever heard. A dude from Canada emptied his bank account, shoved all of his jewelry in a fanny pack, and bought a flight to Germany. He ended up canceling that flight, trying to cross the border to the United States 3 times, renting 2 cars, and driving around Knoxville, Tennessee, where he rented a room at a Fairfield Inn to never even stay there. Instead, he was found the next morning lifeless in a parking lot surrounded by cash. Was he slain by someone, or did he knock himself out in a manic episode? First, I'm going to start off by mixing the dry ingredients together of flour, coconut sugar, baking soda, baking powder, salt, cinnamon, and nutmeg. One July morning in 1996, 2 Tennessee construction workers were going about their day when they found the body of a lifeless man. He was lying on the ground of a parking lot at a hotel in Knoxville that was under construction. As these stories typically go, the workers notified the authorities and they rolled up to the scene. Once officers got there, they noted the man was half naked, covered in bruises, and surrounded by money. His pants and shoes were off, his socks were turned inside out, and his shirt was ripped open. He also had a long strand of hair in his hand. That's odd. Around the area, cops found the man's missing garments as well as a fanny pack and duffel bag. The fanny pack contained $2,000 worth of cash, gold bars, coins, and jewelry. The duffel bag had maps and receipts inside. Gold bars? Were those still a thing in 1996? Authorities also found a car key that belonged to a Toyota Camry and a key card to a room at the Fairfield Inn. In total, the dude had somewhere around $4,000 in American, Canadian, and German currency scattered around his body. Officials were able to identify the man as Blair Adams, a 31-year-old from Canada. They sent his body off for an autopsy where medical examiners reported a lot of cuts and abrasions on his body, some of which were defensive wounds. It also seemed like he had road rash from being dragged or hit by a car. And there was a wound on his forehead that appeared to be from a crowbar or club. And the injury that ended it all was a fatal blow to his midsection. This caused Blair's stomach to rupture, which sent him into septic shock sometime around 3 that morning. Yikes. Examiners held the belief that Blair was physically violated, but they couldn't confirm the theory with DNA evidence. Even still, that doesn't mean it didn't happen. The way his clothes were definitely suggests something like that occurred. So what happened to this dude? And who did it? And why? There are so many questions. One of the first things the investigators did was contact Blair's family. In talking to his mother, they learned that Blair recently came to the US from Canada and he was acting very strange in the weeks leading up to his travels. But as much as Blair's mom tried to figure out what her son's deal was, he said he couldn't tell her about it. The only thing he told her was that people were spreading rumors about him. What is it? What were these rumors about? We need to know. So Blair was originally from Surrey, British Columbia, aka somewhere in Canada. And get this, he worked in construction. I wonder if it was a coincidence that he was found by construction workers at a site they were remodeling. Blair's friends and family members described him as outgoing, friendly, and positive. But just like his mom stated, other people said he was acting weird more recently. People said Blair was super paranoid, stressed, sleep-deprived, and moody. Join the club. And even though that might be the norm for some people, this behavior was extremely out of the ordinary for Blair. But coroners found no traces of alcohol or substances in Blair's system when they performed the autopsy. On top of that, he was never diagnosed with a mental illness. Not to say he didn't have one, but if he did, it went undiagnosed. Basically, Blair was a very normal and upbeat guy, but when the summer of 1996 hit, his whole demeanor changed. On July 5th, he went to his bank and withdrew all of his money, which totaled around $6,000. He also took out all of the gold and jewelry from his safe. After that, Blair went to his mom's house and said he was going to visit his uncle who lived about 4 hours away. But when Blair got there, his uncle wasn't home. The following morning, Blair tried to board a ferry from Victoria, BC to Seattle, but was denied entry by U.S. immigration officers because they thought Blair might have been a dealer or something due to the amount of cash he had. He also lied to officers saying he had no criminal record when he did. Now I'm going to add in applesauce, apple juice, and maple syrup. So Blair left the border and went to visit 2 of his friends. He told them he needed to get to the US because someone was trying to snuff him and asked them to take him to the border. From what I've gathered, Blair didn't go into detail about who this enemy was or why they were going after him, but he told his friends he couldn't go back to his apartment. Okay, this is getting scary. Blair's friends said they couldn't drive him to the border, so he left their place and went to his mom's house to stay the night. The next morning, Monday, July 8th, Blair left his mom's house for the final time. Later that day, Blair spent $1,700 on a round-trip plane ticket to Frankfurt, Germany. Blair had been to Germany in the past and even had an old girlfriend who lived there, so it wasn't the strangest place for him to try and flee to. But when detectives reached out to his ex, she said Blair didn't tell her anything about him coming out there, and he never even got on the flight. In fact, he canceled it and got a refund because he hadn't given up on his goal of crossing the border into the United States. In the wee hours of July 9th, Blair was spotted by the Pacific Highway border crossing between Canada and the US. When the authorities saw him, they immediately perked up because he looked just like a suspect for a car theft that just happened in Vancouver. Officers spoke to Blair thinking he was a suspect, but he maintained his innocence, and aside from a few scratches on his limbs, there was no real evidence to prove Blair was involved in the crime, so he was released. Side note, one of Blair's friends later said Blair was driving in that car, they just didn't know it was stolen at the time. To make things even more confusing, Blair was apparently driving his own car later that day. He drove it to the Vancouver airport, where he abandoned it and rented a Nissan Altima. In his new rental, Blair somehow successfully made it across the border into Seattle. From there, he parked his rental car at the Seattle airport and boarded a flight to Washington, D.C. The one-way ticket Blair bought was about $770, and a detective who worked on the case said he could have purchased a round-trip ticket for approximately $350 or $400, so it would have been half the price for a round-trip ticket as he paid for a one-way ticket. It just seemed very unusual. On the morning of July 10th, Blair landed in D.C. and rented another car. This time he went with a Toyota Camry that he began driving south towards Knoxville, Tennessee, heading out right around 6:45 a.m. Let me just say, Blair has impeccable taste in cars. Both Altimas and Camrys are reliable, get good gas mileage, and drive like a charm. But also, why did he fly to DC and then drive to Tennessee when he could have just gotten a flight straight to Tennessee? That makes no sense. Well, at 5:30 that evening, Blair stopped at a gas station near Knoxville where witnesses reported his odd behavior. Blair was having issues getting his car to start, which he was freaking out about hardcore. When an interstate repair service driver named Gerald came to help, he looked at Blair's car key and was like, "Bro, that's the wrong key." Blair had been trying to start his Camry with the key from the Altima in Seattle. But even after Gerald pointed that out to Blair, he insisted he was using the right key and refused to look for a different one in his pockets. So Blair just kept trying to use the key to the Altima until Gerald stepped in and told Blair he would give him a ride to his hotel if he just got the Camry towed to a nearby mechanic shop where he could figure out the key thing later. Gerald personally dropped Blair off at his hotel, the Fairfield Inn. After doing so, Gerald realized Blair left his bag at the gas station, so he went back to pick it up and swung back by the hotel so he could drop off Blair's bag. What a good citizen. We need more of those. Blair's strange behavior didn't stop after he got to the Fairfield Inn. A woman who worked at the hotel said the best way to describe him would be paranoid. He was just very nervous, agitated, expecting someone to come in on him even though there wasn't anybody there. I don't know who he was looking for, but he was waiting for somebody to walk in for him. Before Blair even got a room, he kept entering and exiting the lobby a bunch of times, like at least 5 times within 45 minutes. After finally paying for his room and getting a key, Blair left the hotel through the front door at 7:37 p.m. He didn't go up to his room, and he never came back that night. The next morning at around 7 a.m., his body was discovered by the 2 construction workers, which brings us back to the investigation. So with all of this knowledge, it's still unclear as to why Blair was in Tennessee and who was after him, if his claims were true. Blair's mom later said in an interview that her son was planning to attend the 1996 Olympic Summer Games in Atlanta, Georgia later that month. She said that was why he must have been in Tennessee. But investigators looked into this theory and found no evidence of Blair intending to go to the Olympic Games or Georgia in general. Officers also spoke to Gerald since he was one of the last people to see Blair, but he didn't know what happened after dropping Blair off at the hotel. Gerald did say this about Blair. He didn't appear to be messed up. He didn't appear to be on drugs, but his mind wasn't functioning correctly for some reason. Gerald complied during the entirety of the interview and even agreed to give hair samples for officials to test against the strand found in Blair's hand. The interstate repair service worker wasn't a match, but he was never really considered a suspect to begin with. Oh, and if you remember, the key to the Toyota Camry was found at the crime scene, which is the correct key Blair needed to start his car at the gas station. So he really did have it the whole time. That is such a mood. I can't tell you how many times I search for my shades when they're literally on top of my head. Another lead that detectives looked into near the beginning of the investigation had to do with the food Blair ate before passing away. In the autopsy, medical examiners concluded Blair ate food from a restaurant shortly before he was slain, and one witness reported seeing Blair talking to a guy at a nearby Cracker Barrel. But nothing ever came of this lead, although I hope the detectives ordered a breakfast platter at the iconic restaurant chain. As for the hair found on Blair's hand, it was tested for DNA, but there were no hits. Literally any time a hint of a lead came about, it was immediately ruled out, leaving detectives with more questions than answers. As of now, there are no solid clues or known suspects. Blair's case remains unsolved, leaving us, true crime fanatics, to piece together the theories. One of the most popular theories to this day is that Blair hired an escort and the exchange went bad. Case followers thought the escort or pimp could have planned the exchange as a setup to rob Blair, but when he started fighting back, they whacked him. There was even a report of a woman's scream coming from the direction of the parking lot around 3:30 a.m. People speculated that the woman screaming was the escort reacting to the pimp striking Blair. Another sub-belief in the escort theory is that the exchange began in a car, and when Blair resisted the robbery, he was smacked in the head, thrown out, and hit by the car, which caused his stomach to rupture. As legit as this idea sounds, detectives were never able to find any proof to back it up. They found no record of Blair hiring an escort, but it could have obviously been a cash transaction. Even still, it wouldn't explain Blair's obscure behavior or travel itinerary. And the idea of a robbery gone wrong just doesn't seem viable, considering the fact that basically all of Blair's money, gold, and jewels were still at the crime scene. Another popular theory is that Blair was dealing with an undiagnosed mental illness, such as paranoid schizophrenia. As scared as Blair was of this alleged person out to get him, authorities were never able to find evidence of someone making attempts, let alone anyone who despised Blair enough to do something bad. Schizophrenia is a mental illness that doesn't appear until people are in their 30s or later, which would explain why Blair seemed upbeat and normal until the summer of 1996. The most common signs of schizophrenia include mood swings, erratic behavior, anxiety, detachment from work, friends, family, experiencing delusions, and more. Yep, that checks out. So it seems like Blair was experiencing the beginning stages of schizophrenia, and the rumors being spread about him, as well as the person threatening to slay Blair, were all just living in his head. This is because his claims have never been backed by proof, and it would make sense with the whole money still at the crime scene thing. But if that's the case, was Blair still iced by someone else, or were his wounds self-inflicted? That's another question people struggle with. Some think Blair could have had a mental breakdown where he ripped his shirt, took off his pants, jabbed himself with something sharp, and delivered the final blow to the gut with his fists. Others say that's impossible. There's no way Blair could have given himself all of those injuries. Plus, what about the hair in his hand and the examiner's theory of forced intimacy? Another theory is that this crime had to do with Blair's sexuality. His mother allegedly said in an interview that Blair had a relationship with one of his male roommates. Now I'm going to top this off with cinnamon sugar and a glaze. Back in the 90s, homosexuality wasn't as accepted as it is today, and to be real, we still have a long way to go. But if someone found out Blair was gay, they could have targeted him. Another thought is that Blair was supposed to meet up with a potential suitor or a one-time fling, and something went wrong. To me, this seems pretty viable. People are willing to do crazy things for love, like cross the border, rent a bunch of cars, and buy plane tickets, although it still doesn't account for the ticket to Germany or Blair's personality shift. Ooh, maybe that was the guy he was allegedly seen with at Cracker Barrel. Actually, I'm not sure a Cracker Barrel would be the best place for two gay men to meet out in Tennessee in the 90s. As you can see, there are a million theories and sub-theories about this case. And yet, none of them fully explain the way Blair was acting, why he traveled where he did, and why he was found with no pants, yet surrounded by money. So what do you think? Was someone really out to get Blair? Was this an escort situation gone wrong? Did he travel to Tennessee for a lover or the Olympics? Or did he do all of this to himself because of an undiagnosed mental illness? The world may never know. But what I can find out for you is how many bites it takes to finish one of these apple cider cakes. Thanks for watching.